You walk into a pharmacy in Hong Kong, you buy shampoo, 20 seconds, in and out. You probably didn't realize this, but you just paid a man named Li Ka-shing. For 40 years, one man owned every link in the chain, the most powerful supply chain operator in the private history. And right now, as you're watching this video, three of the most powerful forces on earth are tearing his empire apart. The President of the United States, Chinese Communist Party, and the Supreme Court of a country most people couldn't find on a map. This is the story of how it was built and why it's all falling now. 1940, 12-year-old Li Ka-shing walks into Hong Kong on foot. His family is fleeing the Japanese army. They have almost nothing. 3 years later, his father dies of tuberculosis. Li drops out of school. He's 15. He gets a job in a plastic factory. 16-hour shifts, sweeping floors, watching the machines, watching the bosses, watching the buyers come in. And here's the thing about Li Ka-shing that nobody talks about enough. He wasn't smart in the way we usually mean it. He had no education, no mentors, no network. What he had was something rarer. He watched. He watched how prices moved, how buyers panicked, how sellers gave up too early, how fortunes were lost, and where they ended up afterwards. By 1950, he had saved up enough to start his own factory, plastic combs, then plastic flowers, after reading in a magazine that they had become popular in Italy. By the late 1950s, he was the largest plastic flower exporter on the planet. But Lee didn't get rich from plastic flowers. He got rich because of what he was watching the entire time. While Lee was selling plastic flowers, he was watching something else. He was watching land. Hong Kong has a problem most cities don't. It's a city built on a sliver of flat land between mountains and ocean. The British colonial government controlled exactly how much new land got released, and they released very little. Most businessmen looked at Hong Kong and saw a place to sell things. Lee looked at Hong Kong and saw something simpler. In a city where the land is the bottleneck, owning the land is the only business that matters. Everyone else is just a tenant. 1967. Riots erupt across Hong Kong, communist inspired, bombs in the streets, a banking crisis from the previous year still has the city shaking. The wealthy panic. They start selling buildings, apartments, land, anything they can move out of the colony. Property prices collapse. He took everything he had, every dollar from the plastic flower business, and he bought real estate at the bottom. His logic was simple, and it's worth remembering because he would use it 3 more times in his life. By 1972, Hong Kong owned 6.3 million square feet of Hong Kong property. Lee took the company public. Within a decade, his firm would build roughly 1 in every 4 new apartments in Hong Kong. And this should have been the peak. A property tycoon, very rich, locally famous, end of story. But in 1979, Li Ka-shing was about to do something that hadn't been done since 1841, and one Australian man was about to lose everything because of it. To understand what Lee did next, you need to know about a man named Bill Willie. Willie was an Australian, a self-made corporate fixer. They called him Dollar Bill because of his nickname for slashing costs. In 1975, HSBC, the most powerful bank in Asia, hired him for one job, to save Hutchison Whampoa. Hutchison Whampoa was one of the 4 British trading houses that had run Hong Kong's economy for over 100 years. Ports, shipyards, telecoms, retail. But by the mid-1970s, it was nearly bankrupt. Willie went to work. He liquidated 103 subsidiaries in a single year. He merged the company with the Hong Kong and Whampoa Dog Company. By 1978, 3 years after he took over, Hutchison Whampoa was healthy, profitable, and listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Willie thought he was building something. He thought the company was going to be his life's work. He had no idea that HSBC had already decided to sell, and he had no idea who they were selling it to. After the London market closed, HSBC made the announcement. The buyer wasn't another British firm, wasn't Jardine Matheson, wasn't Swire, it was Li Ka-shing. 639 million Hong Kong dollars for HSBC's 22% controlling stake, less than half the company's book value according to Hutchison's own board. Lee only had to put down 20%. For the first time since the founding of Hong Kong in 1841, 138 years, a Chinese businessman had taken control of British trading house. Bill Willie, the man who saved Hutchison, watched the company change hands. He didn't even know the deal was happening until it was done. Willie left the company in 1981. He went on to build his own fortune in mining and real estate, but he never built anything like Hutchison Whampoa again. Nobody did. Here's the question worth asking though. Why did HSBC choose Lee? He wasn't the only bidder. Every British firm in Hong Kong wanted Hutchinson. 3 years later, Margaret Thatcher would fly to Beijing to begin negotiating Hong Kong's return to China. HSBC's leadership saw it coming. The British era was ending. HSBC wasn't selling a company, they were placing a bet on who would dominate the next era. They picked correctly. Here's where most billionaires would diversify, buy a soccer team, start a media empire, get into something fashionable. Lee didn't. He bought one specific kind of facet over and over for the next 30 years. He bought chokepoints. 1985, Hutchinson buys 33% of Hong Kong Electric, the monopoly utility for Hong Kong Island. Every light switch on the island, a toll. 1991, Lee buys 75% of Felixstowe. This one's worth pausing on. Felixstowe handles roughly 40% of all containers entering the United Kingdom. Cars, electronics, medicine, clothing. Almost half of everything Britain imports come through this one port. The British government sold it to a Hong Kong businessman in 1991 while Hong Kong was still a British colony. They didn't say it that way. They saw a sale, they were privatizing. Lee saw something else. He saw the trade routes of an entire G7 economy passing through one piece of infrastructure he could now own. Rotterdam, Barcelona, Busan, Sydney, two ports flanking the Panama Canal in 1997, then Mexico, the Bahamas, the Netherlands, Egypt. By 2024, Lee's ports handled 87.5 million shipping containers in a single year. Let me give you that in a context. The entire United States, every port in America combined, handles around 60 million containers a year. One man's private company moved nearly 50% more. Now here's where the strategy turns into something genuinely beautiful. He didn't just own the ports, he owned the stores those containers were going. His retail arm grew into 17,000 stores across 31 markets. A bottle of shampoo gets made in China, loaded at his port, shipped across the world, unloaded at his port, trucked through his logistics network, sold in his store. He's collecting a toll at every single stage. In Hong Kong, the integration was almost total. You wake up in Hong Kong apartment, you pay Lee. You flip on the lights, you pay Lee. You walk to a park and shop for groceries, you pay Lee. You stop at the Watsons for toothpaste, you pay Lee. For 30 years, this empire grew quietly. The world saw Lee as useful, a bridge between China and the West, a man who could move capital between two systems without making either side nervous. He played both sides, and both sides loved him for it. And then in 2012, the man at the top of the Chinese government changed, and the rules of being the bridge changed with him. For 30 years, Lee had been welcomed in Beijing's halls of power. For 30 years, Lee had been welcomed in Beijing's halls of power. After Tiananmen Square in 1989, when foreign capital fled mainland China, Lee doubled down. He became one of the largest Hong Kong investors in the mainland, building Oriental Plaza in Beijing, financial centers in Shanghai, plazas in Guangzhou. Beijing rewarded him, protected him, called him a patriot. Xi Jinping does not believe in bridges, he believes in loyalty. And under Xi, the personal meetings with Lee stop. Hold, there is no public record of Xi Jinping ever meeting Li Ka-shing one-on-one. In 2012, Lee's company stopped buying mainland Chinese land. The last major purchase by Hong Kong on mainland was made the same day Xi took power. Then Lee did something that got Beijing's attention. Between 2013 and 20, Lee liquidated approximately 250 billion Hong Kong dollars, about 32 billion US, in Chinese and Hong Kong assets. He moved the money to United Kingdom. He bought British utilities, British telecoms, Canadian energy. He was leaving. September 2015, a Chinese state-affiliated think tank connected to Xinhua, the official state news agency, published an article. The headline translated as "Don't let Li Ka-shing run away." The message was unmistakable. Li had gotten rich because of Beijing's support. He didn't get to just walk away with the money. It got worse in 2019. When mass protests erupted in Hong Kong against Beijing's tightening control, every major Hong Kong tycoon publicly condemned the protesters. Every single one, except Li. For 2 months, he said nothing. Beijing watched. The pressure grew. Other tycoons published full-page ads pledging loyalty. Then on August 16, 2019, Li placed his own newspaper ad. It was Tang Dynasty poem, 1300 years old, written by a crown prince begging his mother to stop killing his brothers. Scholars at the University of Pennsylvania interpreted it as a coded message to Beijing, a plea for restraint. March 4, 2025. Two events happened on the same day, and the timing was not a coincidence. In Beijing, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference opened, one of the most important political gatherings of the year. In Hong Kong, Lee's holding company CK Hutchison announced it was selling its global ports business. Not the Chinese ports, everything else. 43 ports across 23 countries, including the two flanking the Panama Canal. The buyer was a consortium led by BlackRock, American asset manager, the world's largest.
We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
That same night, President Trump told Congress that an American firm was taking back the Panama Canal ports from the Chinese influence. Within days, attacks from Chinese state media, a pro-Beijing newspaper called Li a traitor. A Fudan University professor wrote that Li had colluded with the American capital. China's State Administration for Market Regulation opened an antitrust review of the deal. The deal didn't close. Then in January 2026, Panama's Supreme Court ruled Hutchison's original 1997 concession to operate the Balboa and the Cristobal ports, the contract he had held for 29 years, was unconstitutional. The Panamanian government seized both terminals, handed them to Maersk and MSC, two European shipping giants. 2 months later, in March 2026, Costco, China's state-owned shipping line, historically one of Hutchison's largest customers, suspended operations at Balboa entirely. The deal that was supposed to be Li Ka-shing's clean exit became a three-way standoff between superpowers. The man who'd spent 40 years being useful to everyone discovered that in the new global economy, being useful to everyone is no longer possible. Li Ka-shing is 96 years old. He still lives in Hong Kong and he's still richer than almost anyone alive. His businesses are being dismantled by forces he can no longer control. So what do you take from a story like this? 4 things, and all 4 of them are worth remembering because they show up in every empire that we've ever built and every empire that we've ever lost. Li never tried to manufacture shampoo. He owned the ports the shampoos passed through. He never tried to generate electricity. He owned the grid. The flow of goods changes constantly. The infrastructure they pass through doesn't. And that's what Li knew, and that's what he did. The 1967 riots, the 1979 HSBC distress sale, the post-Tiananmen China which nobody else wanted, 3 of the 5 most important deals of Li's life were made when people were panicking. But, and this matters the most, he could only act fast because he already knew what he wanted to buy. His ports made the retail more profitable, the retail made the real estate more valuable, the real estate made the power utility more profitable. Each business was a customer of the others. Most conglomerates fail because their divisions don't help each other. Li's empire was a rare exception. In technical terms, this is called vertical integration. SpaceX is one of those companies that has been doing this since its inception, which is one of the biggest reasons for it to get valued at $1.75 trillion for its IPO. This is the one. Li believed he could be useful to Beijing, useful to London, useful to Washington forever. The neutrality was a permanent position until it wasn't. It was a temporary equilibrium. It held as long as the great powers tolerated the middle. The customer at the start of this video, the bottle of shampoo, it still gets where it's going, the ports still operate, the shelves still get stocked, global trade doesn't stop, It just stops being controlled by one person. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you got to know something new. See you in the next video.